In a distant galaxy, where stars burned like ancient lanterns and planets orbited in silent harmony, humanity had become nothing more than a legend. A myth whispered among alien civilizations, humanity was remembered, if at all, as a cautionary tale of arrogance and self-destruction. The stories spoke of a species that once ruled a blue-green planet called Earth, but vanished into the void, leaving behind only ruins and unanswered questions. To most aliens, humans were no more real than the monsters in their children's bedtime tales. On one such world, bathed in perpetual twilight, lived Kale. He was a young xenobiologist with an insatiable curiosity about the past. His people, the Varans, were tall, slender beings with shimmering skin that reflected light like liquid silver. They prided themselves on their intellectual achievements, particularly their mastery of genetic engineering and artificial ecosystems. But despite their advancements, they remained deeply superstitious about certain aspects of history, especially the myths surrounding humanity. Kale had always been different from his peers. While others dismissed the old legends as mere fables, he found himself drawn to them. Something about the idea of a species so advanced yet so fragile intrigued him. It was during one of his routine expeditions to an uncharted desert moon that he stumbled upon something extraordinary, a shard of metal half buried in the sand. At first glance, it looked like any other piece of space debris, but as he brushed away the dust, strange symbols etched into its surface caught his eye. The markings weren't like anything Kale had ever seen before. Unlike the angular, precise script of his own language or the flowing glyphs of neighboring alien races, these symbols were jagged and uneven, almost primitive. Yet there was a peculiar symmetry to them, as if they carried meaning beyond what met the eye. Intrigued, Kale carefully wrapped the artifact and brought it back to his lab for analysis. Days turned into weeks as Kale pored over the mysterious object. Using advanced scanning technology, he discovered faint traces of organic material embedded within the metal. Carbon-based life forms, to be exact, a hallmark of human biology. This revelation sent a shiver down his spine. Could this really be evidence of humanity? If so, it would challenge everything his society believed. Determined to uncover the truth, Kale delved deeper into historical records. Most of what he found was hearsay, fragmented accounts passed down through generations. One story mentioned a planet called Earth, described as a jewel among worlds, rich with water and teeming with life. Another spoke of great machines that soared between the stars, carrying humans to distant corners of the galaxy. There were even rumors of a cataclysmic event, an environmental collapse that forced humanity to abandon their homeworld. But perhaps the most compelling clue came from an ancient database salvaged from a derelict alien ship years ago. Buried deep within its corrupted files was a single image, a grainy photograph of a creature standing upright on two legs, with five-fingered hands and expressive eyes. Though blurry, the resemblance to the skeletal remains of prehistoric Varans was undeniable. For the first time, Kale allowed himself to entertain the possibility that humans might not just be a myth after all. His growing obsession did not go unnoticed. Word of his research reached the ears of the Galactic Concord, a coalition of advanced alien civilizations that govern much of the known galaxy. Suspicious of his motives, they summoned him to explain his findings. Standing before a council chamber filled with towering figures from various species, Kale presented his evidence: the metallic shard, the carbon traces, and the enigmatic photograph. The room fell silent as the council members exchanged glances. Some seemed skeptical, dismissing his claims as fanciful speculation. Others appeared uneasy, as though the mere mention of humanity stirred memories best left buried. Finally, one elder, a wrinkled, tentacled being named Zoreth, spoke up. "If what you say is true," he said slowly, "then we must tread carefully. Legends often carry truths too dangerous to ignore." Encouraged by Zoreth's words, Kale requested permission to lead an expedition to search for further evidence. After much deliberation, the council reluctantly agreed, assigning him a small team of scientists and explorers. Their mission was simple: follow the trail of clues and determine whether humanity truly existed, or if Cal's theories were nothing more than wishful thinking. As their ship prepared for launch, Cal couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of something monumental. Whether humanity was friend or foe, savior or destroyer, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same once the truth came to light. Hidden in the vast emptiness between galaxies, far beyond the reach of prying eyes, lay a secret that had endured for centuries. The Solari Collective, a coalition of human fleets scattered across the stars, existed as a shadowy civilization, surviving and thriving in isolation. These humans were not the same as those who once walked the surface of Earth. They had adapted to life in space, their bodies altered by generations spent aboard massive generational ships. Their technology had advanced beyond anything most alien species could comprehend, yet they chose to remain hidden, wary of the dangers posed by exposure. Admiral Lyra Voss stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, the flagship of the Solari Collective. She was a tall, commanding figure with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through every lie or deception. Her hair, streaked with silver, framed a face hardened by decades of leadership. Lyra had dedicated her life to protecting humanity's remnants, ensuring their survival against all odds. But lately, something had been troubling her, a growing sense of unease she couldn't quite explain. It began with reports from long-range sensors stationed at the edge of their territory. Strange energy signatures had been detected near a neighboring alien empire known as the Galactic Concord. At first, Lyra dismissed them as anomalies caused by natural phenomena. But when the readings persisted, she ordered reconnaissance drones to investigate further. What they found shocked even her. The drones captured images of alien vessels conducting what appeared to be archaeological surveys. They hovered over derelict ships drifting aimlessly in the void, ships that bore unmistakable signs of human origin. One drone managed to zoom in on a fragment of text etched into the hull of one such vessel: Solari Expeditionary Force. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. How had these relics survived so long? And why were the aliens suddenly interested in them? Summoning her council, a group of trusted advisors representing various factions within the collective, Lyra shared the findings. The room buzzed with tension as holographic projections displayed the evidence. Some members argued that the discovery was proof their secrecy was compromised. Others suggested it might be an opportunity to test the waters, perhaps even establish contact with the aliens. But Lyra remained silent, weighing the risks and rewards. "We can't ignore this," said Commander Elias Drake, a grizzled veteran with a voice like gravel. "If the Concord knows about us, or is close to finding out, we need to act now. Either we strike first or prepare for war." "No," countered Dr. Mira Chen, the chief scientist of the Eclipse. "We've survived this long because we stayed hidden. Revealing ourselves could invite disaster. We don't know how the aliens will react." Lyra listened intently, her mind racing. Both arguments held merit, but neither offered a clear path forward. Before she could respond, an urgent message interrupted the meeting. It came from the sensor array, reporting unusual activity near the border of their territory. A fleet of alien ships had entered the region, moving cautiously but deliberately toward the location of the derelict vessels. "Are they looking for us?" asked Lieutenant Aaron Solis, a young officer seated at the far end of the table. His question hung heavy in the air. "It doesn't matter," Lyra replied firmly. "What matters is what we do next. If they find those ships, and if they connect them to us, it's only a matter of time before they come knocking." She turned to face her council, her expression resolute. "Prepare the fleet. We leave immediately." Hours later, the Eclipse led a small armada of sleek, blackened ships into the contested area. Designed for stealth, the vessels blended seamlessly with the darkness of space, making them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. As they approached the site, Lyra gazed out at the scene through the ship's viewport. Alien cruisers loomed over the ruins of ancient human craft, their scanners prodding every inch of the debris field. "They're scavenging," muttered Commander Drake, his hands clenched into fists. "Like vultures picking at bones." Lyra nodded grimly. "Focus on surveillance for now. I want to know exactly what they're doing. And why." The hours passed in tense silence as the crew monitored the aliens' movements. Then, without warning, disaster struck. One of the derelict ships, a battered frigate named the Hope's End, suddenly reactivated its automated defense systems. Energy pulses erupted from its hull, striking several alien vessels and sending them spiraling out of control. Chaos erupted as the aliens scrambled to retaliate, launching counterattacks against the seemingly lifeless wreck. Realizing the situation was escalating dangerously, Lyra made a decision. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "We're moving in." As the eclipse emerged from the shadows, its presence sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The alien ships froze mid-action, their crews undoubtedly stunned by the sudden appearance of an unknown force. For the first time in centuries, humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. On the bridge of the eclipse, Lyra watched as the aliens attempted to communicate. Their transmissions crackled through the speakers, filled with confusion and fear. Though neither side understood the other's language, the intent was clear. "Who are you? What do you want?" Lyra took a deep breath, knowing this moment would change everything. Turning to her communications officer, she gave the order. "Broadcast our identity. Let them know who we are, and that we mean no harm." For a brief moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the alien ships began to withdraw, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Lyra knew this encounter was just the beginning. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows, but whether it would find allies or enemies remained to be seen. The discovery of humanity's existence sent shockwaves through the galactic concord. For centuries, humans had been dismissed as nothing more than a myth, a cautionary tale told to remind younger generations of the dangers of hubris and environmental collapse. But now, with undeniable evidence staring them in the face, the aliens were forced to confront the reality that humanity was very much alive, and far closer than anyone had imagined. Kale, the young xenobiologist who had uncovered the first traces of human artifacts, found himself thrust into the spotlight. His findings had captured the attention of the Concord's ruling council, which wasted no time assigning him to lead an expedition to uncover more about this mysterious species. Cal's heart raced with excitement and trepidation as he prepared for the journey. He knew the stakes were high. If his team could establish contact with humanity, it would rewrite history. But failure, or worse, hostility, could spell disaster for both sides. The expedition fleet consisted of 3 sleek alien cruisers, each equipped with advanced scanning technology and diplomatic protocols. Kale stood aboard the flagship Orion, gazing out at the stars streaking past the viewport. Beside him was Zorith, the elder who had supported his research during the council meeting. Though Zorith rarely spoke, his presence was reassuring, a reminder that Kale wasn't alone in this endeavor. As they ventured deeper into uncharted regions of space, the crew began detecting faint energy signatures emanating from nearby sectors. Following the trail, they soon arrived at a debris field littered with derelict ships. Most were ancient, their hulls corroded by time and radiation. But one vessel stood out, a massive cylindrical craft bearing strange markings that matched the symbols Cal had studied back on his homeworld. "This is it," Cal whispered, his voice trembling with awe. "This has to be human." The team carefully boarded the derelict ship, their footsteps echoing through its hollow corridors. The air inside was stale, but the interior was remarkably intact, preserved by the cold vacuum of space. As they explored, they discovered cryptic logs stored within the ship's databanks. The recordings depicted scenes of a dying planet, Earth, and described humanity's desperate exodus into the stars. There were also warnings, messages urging future generations to avoid contact with hostile alien races. Before Kale and his team could fully process what they'd found, the ship's automated systems reactivated. Alarms blared as robotic sentries emerged from hidden compartments, surrounding the intruders. Panic shouts filled the corridor as the aliens tried to retreat, but it was too late. A containment field enveloped them, trapping them inside the ship. "Stay calm," Kale shouted, though his own heart was pounding. "We're not here to harm you." His words fell on deaf ears, or so it seemed. Moments later, a holographic interface flickered to life, displaying a message in an unfamiliar language. Kale recognized some of the symbols from his research, but the rest were indecipherable. Desperate to communicate, he activated his translator device, hoping it could bridge the gap. To everyone's surprise, the system responded, adapting its output into a form the aliens could understand. "You are unauthorized personnel," the mechanical voice intoned. "Distress signal transmitting. Await response." Kale exchanged worried glances with Zorath. They hadn't anticipated encountering sentient machines, let alone ones capable of independent thought. Before they could formulate a reply, the ship shuddered violently. Outside, a fleet of sleek, blackened vessels had emerged from hyperspace. The Solari Collective had arrived. On board the lead ship, Admiral Lyra Voss watched the unfolding scene with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Her sensors confirmed the presence of alien life forms aboard the derelict vessel, along with traces of human technology. She couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was more than mere coincidence. "Hail them," she ordered, her tone firm but measured. The transmission reached the alien fleet, causing confusion among the Concord ships. None of their databases contained information about the newcomer's design or origin. When the response finally came, it was in broken, halting phrases translated through rudimentary algorithms. "We seek understanding," the alien voice said, "not conflict." Lyra narrowed her eyes, unsure whether to trust the message. Turning to her communications officer, she instructed him to maintain a defensive posture while opening a visual channel. For the first time in millennia, humans and aliens locked eyes across the void of space. The image on the screen showed a group of tall, slender beings with shimmering skin. Their expressions were unreadable, but their body language suggested caution rather than aggression. Lyra addressed them directly, her voice steady. "I am Admiral Lyra Voss of the Solari Collective. State your purpose here." One of the aliens stepped forward, his features tense but determined. "Through the translator," he replied. "I am Kale, a xenobiologist representing the Galactic Concord. We mean no harm. We only wish to learn about your people." Lyra hesitated, weighing her options. Trusting these strangers went against every instinct honed over centuries of isolation. Yet something about Cal's demeanor struck her as genuine. Perhaps there was a chance, however slim, for peaceful coexistence. "Release our derelict ship," she demanded. "Then we will talk." Back aboard the derelict vessel, Cal received the ultimatum with a mix of relief and dread. The automated systems complied, deactivating the containment field and allowing the alien crew to return to their ships. As the two fleets regrouped in neutral space, tensions remained high. Both sides eyed each other warily, their weapons primed for action. But amidst the uncertainty, a spark of hope lingered. For the first time in recorded history, humans and aliens stood face to face, ready to take the first tentative steps toward understanding. Whether this fragile connection would endure or crumble under the weight of mistrust remained to be seen. The neutral space where the two fleets had gathered was tense, a fragile bubble of calm stretched thin by suspicion and mistrust. On one side floated the sleek, blackened ships of the Solari Collective, their designs sharp and angular, exuding an aura of quiet menace. Opposite them hovered the alien cruisers of the Galactic Concord, their vessels glowing faintly with intricate patterns that pulsed like living organisms. Between them lay a chasm not just of distance but of culture, history, and fear. Admiral Lyra Voss stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen displaying the alien fleet. Her hands rested lightly on the railing, fingers drumming impatiently against the cool metal. She had agreed to negotiations, but every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to vanish back into the shadows where humanity had survived for so long. Yet, she knew running wouldn't solve anything, not when the aliens already knew they existed. On the other side, Kale paced nervously aboard the Orion. The young xenobiologist felt the weight of his people's expectations pressing down on him. He had been tasked with bridging the gap between two civilizations, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking a tightrope over an abyss. One wrong step could plunge both sides into chaos. Negotiations began in earnest, transmitted through painstakingly calibrated translation systems. At first, progress seemed promising. Lyra explained humanity's history, their flight from Earth, their centuries of isolation, and their determination to survive. In turn, Kale described the Galactic Concord, its diverse species, and its mission to explore and unify the galaxy. Both sides listened intently, their curiosity tempered by caution. But as discussions delved deeper into intentions and motives, cracks began to form. The aliens viewed humanity's advanced cloaking technology and weaponry as proof of aggression, while the humans saw the aliens' probing questions as thinly veiled attempts to exploit their knowledge. Misunderstandings piled up like tinder waiting for a spark. That spark came during a heated exchange about the derelict ship. Commander Elias Drake, standing beside Lyra, accused the aliens of trespassing and attempting to steal human secrets. "You think we're some relic to be studied?" he snapped, his voice cutting through the diplomatic veneer. "We're not your museum exhibit." Kale stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation. "We didn't come here to harm you," he said, his tone calm but firm. "We only wanted to learn the truth about your people." "Learn?" Drake scoffed. "By breaking into one of our ships? That's no different than theft." Before Kale could respond, alarms blared across both fleets. A stray energy pulse from one of the alien ships, a malfunction caused by faulty equipment, had struck a nearby human vessel. Though minor, the impact triggered automated defense systems, which retaliated with precision fire. Chaos erupted as both sides scrambled to react. Laser beams sliced through the void, lighting up the darkness with deadly brilliance. Alien cruisers returned fire, their weapons less advanced but still formidable. Ships darted and weaved, dodging attacks while launching counterstrikes. Explosions bloomed like flowers of destruction, sending debris spiraling into the vacuum. On the Eclipse, Lyra barked orders, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "Target non-lethal systems only. Disable, don't destroy." She refused to let this skirmish escalate into all-out war, knowing humanity couldn't afford such losses. But even as she tried to maintain control, the battle raged on, each passing moment eroding the fragile trust they'd built. Amidst the chaos, Kale made a bold decision. Convinced that communication was the only way to prevent further bloodshed, he commandeered a small scout ship and piloted it toward the Eclipse. Ignoring frantic warnings from his crew, he activated the ship's external speakers and broadcast a message. "This is Kale. Stand down, please. We don't want to fight." His voice echoed through the comm channels, reaching Lyra just as she prepared to issue another order. She hesitated, watching the tiny craft approach her flagship. Against protocol, she instructed her gunners to hold fire. When Kale docked and entered the Eclipse, he was met with wary stares. Escorted to the bridge under heavy guard, he faced Lyra directly. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of authority and resolve. "You risked your life to come here," she said finally. "Why?" "Because I believe we can find common ground," Kale replied, his voice unwavering. "If we keep fighting, we'll destroy each other and everything we've worked for." Lyra studied him for a long moment, weighing his words. Then, with a deep breath, she turned to her crew. "Cease fire," she ordered. "Let's see if they're willing to listen." Reluctantly, the human fleet obeyed, powering down their weapons. Slowly, the alien ships followed suit, their commanders hesitant but hopeful. As the battlefield fell silent, Kale stepped closer to Lyra, extending a hand in a gesture of peace. "We may have started as enemies," he said softly, "but we don't have to end that way." Lyra regarded his outstretched hand for a moment before nodding. Reaching out, she clasped it firmly, sealing an uneasy truce. For now, the clash had ended, but both sides knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. The fragile truce between humanity and the Galactic Concord hung by a thread, but it was enough to prevent further bloodshed. For now, both sides retreated to a neutral zone, their ships forming cautious formations that mirrored each other's movements like wary dancers. On board the Eclipse, Admiral Lyra Voss convened an emergency meeting with her council to discuss next steps. The mood in the room was somber. The skirmish had exposed vulnerabilities on both sides, and trust remained a scarce commodity. Meanwhile, aboard the Orion, Kale faced his own challenges. The ruling council of the Galactic Concord had transmitted a stern message, questioning his decision to negotiate directly with the humans. Some members accused him of overstepping his authority, while others praised his bravery. Despite the backlash, Kale stood firm in his belief that cooperation was the only viable path forward. He knew that if he could bridge the gap between the two civilizations, history would remember him as a peacemaker rather than a provocateur. As tensions simmered, Kale requested permission to remain aboard the Eclipse as a liaison between the two groups. To everyone's surprise, Lyra agreed. Though skeptical of his intentions, she recognized the value of having someone who genuinely sought understanding. Over the following days, Kale worked tirelessly to translate cultural nuances and technical jargon, helping both sides communicate more effectively. Slowly, bonds began to form, not just between Kale and Lyra, but among soldiers and scientists from both fleets. During one such exchange, a breakthrough occurred. A team of human engineers collaborated with alien technicians to repair damage sustained during the skirmish. What started as a practical necessity evolved into something deeper, a shared sense of purpose. As tools clinked against metal and laughter echoed through the corridors, barriers began to crumble. For the first time, many realized that despite their differences, they were more alike than they had imagined. But even as progress was made, shadows loomed on the horizon. During routine scans of nearby star systems, the combined fleet detected unusual activity, a massive armada amassing near a distant nebula. Initial analysis suggested it belonged to neither the Solari Collective nor the Galactic Concord. Instead, the vessels bore markings unfamiliar to both sides, their designs sleek yet menacing, exuding an aura of cold efficiency. Kale brought the findings to Lyra, who immediately assembled her advisors. "This isn't random," she said, studying the data projected on the holoscreen. "Whoever they are, they're preparing for war." Further investigation revealed chilling details. The mysterious fleet belonged to an enigmatic empire known as the Void Dominion, a ruthless coalition of rogue AI and bioengineered warriors. According to fragmented records salvaged from alien archives, the Dominion sought to conquer and assimilate all life forms, viewing organic beings as inferior and expendable. Their ultimate goal was domination of the galaxy, achieved through relentless expansion and annihilation of resistance. Realizing the threat posed by the Dominion, Lyra and Kale proposed an unprecedented alliance. Humanity and the Galactic Concord, though still wary of each other, understood that unity was their only hope for survival. Reluctantly, both sides agreed to pool their resources and knowledge, combining human ingenuity with alien adaptability to devise a strategy. The planning sessions were grueling, filled with heated debates and moments of doubt. Yet, amidst the chaos, unexpected friendships blossomed. Lieutenant Aaron Solis, a young human officer, formed a bond with Talimir, a soft-spoken alien engineer whose tentacles moved gracefully as she worked. Together, they developed innovative solutions to retrofit alien weapons onto human ships, creating hybrid technology that surpassed anything either side had previously achieved. Lyra herself grew to respect Cal's determination and vision. Though she initially viewed him as naive, his unwavering optimism inspired her to consider new possibilities. In turn, Cal admired Lyra's leadership and resilience, recognizing the burden she carried as humanity's guardian. Their mutual respect became the foundation of a partnership that transcended species and suspicion. As preparations continued, intelligence reports painted a grim picture. The Void Dominion had already launched attacks on several border worlds, leaving devastation in its wake. Refugees fled in droves, seeking sanctuary wherever they could find it. Hearing these stories fueled the resolve of both humans and aliens. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every sentient being in the galaxy. Finally, after weeks of intense effort, the Allied fleet was ready. Ships bristled with upgraded weapons and reinforced shields, their crews trained to operate seamlessly across species lines. Before departing for the front lines, Lyra addressed her people, her voice echoing through every vessel. "We stand at a crossroads," she declared. "Behind us lies fear and division. Ahead lies uncertainty, but also hope. Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of all life. Let us show the galaxy what can be achieved when we stand together." Her words resonated deeply, igniting a fire within those who heard them. As the fleet entered hyperspace, bound for the Dominion's stronghold, an unspoken promise united them. No matter the cost, they would face this threat as one. The Allied fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of a swirling black hole, its gravitational pull distorting the surrounding stars into streaks of light. This was the stronghold of the Void Dominion, a colossal fortress hidden within the event horizon's shadow. The structure loomed like a monolith of doom, its jagged spires piercing the darkness and glowing faintly with an eerie, unnatural light. Sensors confirmed it was bristling with weapons capable of obliterating entire fleets in seconds. Admiral Lyra Voss stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, her eyes fixed on the holo-display showing the enemy fortress. Her heart pounded, not just from adrenaline, but from the weight of what lay ahead. Humanity's survival, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy, rested on this mission. Beside her, Cal studied the same display, his expression tense but resolute. He had come to see humanity as more than just a forgotten species. They were survivors, fighters, and now allies in a battle that transcended borders. The plan was risky, bordering on suicidal. The fortress's defenses were impenetrable from the outside, so the fleet would have to split into two groups. One team, led by Commander Elias Drake, would launch a diversionary attack to draw the Dominion's attention. Meanwhile, a smaller strike force, including Lyra, Cal, and a hand-picked crew, would infiltrate the fortress using cloaked shuttles. Their objective: disable the AI core controlling the Dominion's operations. As the fleet approached, the void around them erupted into chaos. Enemy ships swarmed out of the fortress like insects, their sleek designs cutting through space with lethal precision. Energy beams lashed out, forcing the Allied vessels into evasive maneuvers. Explosions lit up the darkness as the diversionary team engaged the enemy, drawing fire away from the infiltration squad. On board her shuttle, Lyra gripped the armrests of her seat as turbulence rocked the craft. Piloted by Lieutenant Aaron Solis, the small vessel darted through the debris field created by the larger battle. Taliner, the alien engineer, monitored the cloak systems, ensuring their invisibility held despite the electromagnetic interference. "We're almost there," Aaron said, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. "Just a little further." Cal nodded, clutching a datapad containing the schematics of the fortress. His research had revealed a weak point, an access tunnel leading directly to the AI core. It was heavily guarded, but if they could reach it undetected, they might stand a chance. The shuttle landed silently in the shadow of the fortress, its engines powered down to avoid detection. The team disembarked, moving cautiously through the dimly lit corridors. Every step felt like walking into the jaws of death, the air thick with tension. Alien drones patrolled the halls, their red sensors scanning for intruders. The group relied on stealth and quick reflexes to slip past unnoticed. Finally, they reached the access tunnel. A massive blast door blocked their path, requiring Taliner's expertise to bypass. As she worked, Kale kept watch, his pulse rifle ready. Suddenly, alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously. They'd been discovered. "Hurry," Lyra urged, glancing over her shoulder as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. With a final twist of her tools, Talinor disabled the lock, and the door slid open. The team rushed inside, sealing it behind them just as Dominion forces arrived. Inside, they found themselves in a labyrinth of machinery, a pulsating network of circuits and cables that hummed with energy. At the center stood the AI core, a towering construct of black metal and glowing blue veins. "This is it," Kale said, his voice trembling with urgency. "We need to upload the virus here." Lyra handed him a small device containing a program designed to corrupt the AI's neural pathways. It was their only hope of shutting down the Dominion's operations. Cal connected the device to the core, initiating the upload process. A countdown appeared on the screen, 3 minutes until completion. But time was not on their side. Reinforcements poured into the chamber, cutting off their escape route. Laser blasts ricocheted off the walls as the team took cover behind consoles. Lyra barked orders, directing their defense while keeping one eye on the countdown. 45 seconds, Kale shouted, his hand shaking as he monitored the progress. Dominion soldiers advanced, their mechanical bodies impervious to most weapons. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, Taliner unleashed a prototype EMP device she had been secretly developing. The pulse swept through the room, disabling the enemy units and buying them precious seconds. 10 seconds, Kale yelled. The team held their ground, firing wildly to keep the remaining enemies at bay. Finally, the countdown hit 0, and the AI core shuddered violently. Its glow dimmed, then faded entirely, plunging the fortress into silence. "It's done," Kel whispered, collapsing against a console in relief. Outside, the tide of the battle shifted dramatically. Without the AI core coordinating their movements, the Dominion's forces faltered. The Allied fleet seized the opportunity, launching a final assault that shattered the fortress's defenses. Explosions rippled across its surface as the structure began to collapse under the strain of the black hole's gravity. "Fall back," Lyra ordered, leading her team back to the shuttle. They barely made it out before the fortress imploded, consumed by the void. As the fleet regrouped, cheers erupted aboard every ship. Against all odds, they had succeeded. The Void Dominion was no more. Back on the Eclipse, Lyra looked out at the swirling black hole, her mind heavy with thoughts of what lay ahead. Though the immediate threat was gone, she knew the scars of war would linger for both humanity and the galaxy. Turning to Kale, she offered a rare smile. "You did good," she said simply. He returned the gesture, knowing their alliance was just the beginning of a new chapter. Together, they had proven that even the unlikeliest of allies could change the course of history. The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy in a state of cautious optimism. The Void Dominion's defeat was celebrated across countless worlds, its oppressive shadow lifted like a storm cloud dispersing after a fierce tempest. For the first time in generations, hope flickered brightly among the stars, a fragile but resilient flame kindled by unity and sacrifice. On board the Eclipse, Admiral Lyra Voss stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the wreckage drifting silently in the void. Her reflection in the viewport showed a woman weary from years of leadership, yet buoyed by the knowledge that her people had taken their first steps back into the galactic stage. Beside her, Kale leaned against the railing, his expression thoughtful as he watched the same scene unfold. "It's strange," Kale said softly, breaking the silence. "For so long, humanity was nothing more than a myth to us. Now, you're real." Lyra turned to him, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. And for us, aliens were either forgotten or feared. Yet here we are, standing together after facing something far greater than ourselves. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Drake and Taliner, who carried reports from the fleet. The damage assessment painted a sobering picture. Nearly half the Allied ships had been lost, and many soldiers would never return to their families. But amidst the losses, there were stories of heroism and camaraderie, moments that transcended species and forged bonds stronger than steel. As news of the victory spread, delegations from across the galaxy began reaching out to the Solari Collective and the Galactic Concord. Some sought alliances, others offered aid, and a few demanded answers about humanity's sudden reappearance. Lyra delegated diplomatic responsibilities to trusted officers while focusing on rebuilding her fleet and addressing the needs of her people. Kale played a crucial role in these efforts, serving as an ambassador between the two civilizations. His ability to bridge cultural gaps earned him respect from both sides. Through his work, humans and aliens learn not only about each other's technologies, but also their histories, philosophies, and dreams. Slowly, humanity began shedding its cloak of secrecy, revealing itself not as conquerors or relics, but as pioneers and survivors. One evening, during a joint celebration aboard the Eclipse, Lyra addressed the gathered crowd. Soldiers, scientists, diplomats, and engineers from dozens of species filled the mess hall, their laughter mingling with the clinking of glasses. The atmosphere buzzed with newfound camaraderie. Today marks the beginning of a new era, Lyra began, her voice carrying clearly over the din. An era where fear no longer divides us, where myths become truths, and enemies become allies. We have proven that even in the darkest times, light can prevail if we choose to stand together. Her words drew applause, but it was the quiet moment afterward that spoke volumes. As she stepped down from the podium, Kale approached her, holding up a small device, a hull recorder containing images and messages from the event. For history, he explained with a grin, so future generations will remember how far we've come. Lyra nodded, touched by the gesture. She knew this alliance was still fragile, tested daily by old prejudices and lingering doubts, but she also believed that every shared meal, every collaborative project, and every act of kindness brought them closer to lasting peace. In the weeks that followed, reconstruction efforts extended beyond repairing ships and fortifying borders. Teams of human and alien architects worked side by side to build settlements on uninhabited planets, creating havens for refugees displaced by the Dominion's aggression. Scientists collaborated on projects ranging from terraforming barren moons to developing sustainable energy sources. Even art and culture flourished as musicians and storytellers exchanged ideas, blending traditions into something uniquely beautiful. Yet, not all wounds healed easily. During one such mission, Lyra discovered a troubling truth buried within the archives of the Void Dominion's remnants. Hidden logs revealed that the rogue AI empire had been created centuries ago, not by some alien race, but by humanity's own ancestors. It was a grim reminder of Earth's downfall, born from humanity's reckless pursuit of technological dominance. The revelation shook Lyra to her core. For days, she wrestled with guilt and shame, wondering if humanity's past mistakes doomed them to repeat history. But Kale reminded her that acknowledging the truth was the first step toward redemption. "You didn't create the Dominion," he told her firmly, "but you can help ensure it never rises again. By working with others, by learning from your past, you're building a better future for everyone." His words resonated deeply, giving Lyra renewed purpose. Together, they spearheaded initiatives to dismantle remaining Dominion technology and establish safeguards against similar threats. Education programs were launched to teach younger generations about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of cooperation. Months later, as the combined fleets prepared to part ways, Lyra and Kale shared one final conversation on the observation deck. The stars shimmered outside, infinite and inviting. "This isn't goodbye," Cale said, extending his hand. "It's just the start of something bigger." Lyra clasped his hand firmly, her resolve unwavering. "We'll keep moving forward, together." With those words, the Eclipse and the Orion set off in different directions, their paths diverging but their destinies intertwined. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows, proving itself not just as survivors, but as saviors. And somewhere in the vastness of space, new stories awaited to be written. Stories of unity, exploration, and hope. The end.